Hey guys, it's Cobra Roll 915 here, and today we're going to be predicting division winners for this upcoming NFL season. We'll say probably going to be a lot of repeats in this video. Doesn't feel like there'll be much changes on division winners. I feel like more so the wildcard teams will change a lot this year, but there's a lot of repeats, mostly safe picks, but there are a few that might be considered controversial. Without further ado, let's just jump in. All right, so first up is the AFC North, and for the AFC North, I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens. As much as I want to go with the Bengals, it doesn't, because that's my team. It doesn't really feel like they improved this offseason, at least not enough to justify giving them the edge over the Ravens, especially if Trey Hendrickson doesn't end up playing. And while the North has been the most competitive division throughout the 2020 so far, it just feels like the Ravens are kind of set to three-peat. Bengals and Steelers, they could make things interesting. For a few weeks, it might be close there, but I think by the end of the season, the Ravens will run away with it. Because I don't think the Bengals nor the Steelers have the firepower or the depth to keep up with them. And while the Browns did have a good offseason, especially with the draft, even considering the whole Kenshon Judkins situation, it still feels like they're in the rebuilding process. And then you have the Ravens, who have one of the most well-constructed and best rosters in the league. They got a top quarterback, a top running back, arguably the best safety with Kyle Hamilton. Really a good secondary in general. Marlon Humphrey's been solid for a few years now. Nate Wiggins is an exciting young cornerback. Then they added Jair Alexander, and if he can stay healthy, I think he'll be good for them. They did have a few weaknesses from last year, namely the pass rush, which I feel like they did a good job addressing by drafting Mike Green in the second round and a nice Peebles. I mean, Mike Green, a lot of people had him going in the first round. I saw a lot of mock drafts where he was even going over James Pierce Jr., who did get drafted in the first round. So you can imagine how frustrating it was to watch him just land in the Ravens' lap. And they also kind of addressed the other safety position because Marcus Williams really struggled last year. I think at some point he was the second worst graded safety according to PFF, which I know is not the be-all end-all, but he didn't have a good year. So they got rid of him, or he might be still on the roster, but they drafted Malachi Starks to replace him. And I think, well, he's a rookie. We don't know how good he will be. I think he'll be an upgrade over Marcus Williams. Besides that, Lamar, as we know, is a proven winner in the regular season. Say what you want about his postseason performances, but he has led his team to victory in the regular season. It's the reason why they've been so successful during this era. He's won over 70% of his regular season starts, and in the 4 years that he's been a starter and played at least 15 games, they've won the North in 3 of them. The only one they didn't win was that 1 year where the Steelers got off to 11-0 start. I think that was 2020. Next up is the AFC East, and no surprise here, I'm going with the Buffalo Bills. I could see the Jets and Patriots improving marginally. I do like Drake May a lot, and I do think they did a good job adding around him this offseason, signing guys like Milton Williams and drafting Will Campbell especially. And the Dolphins could be competitive, but the Bills are far and away the best in the division with the best QB in the division. They had a great draft class, especially when it came to the trenches, adding TJ Sanders from South Carolina, Landon Jackson from Arkansas, Deone Walker from Kentucky. And they also went out and got a few veterans out of the trenches, getting Joey Bosa, who, of course, he'll be a shell of his former self, at least I believe so. He should still be an impact player. And they added Larry Ogunjobi. They even boosted up the cornerback room. I know they drafted Maxwell Harrison in the first round. I thought that was a little bit of a reach, but I do think Harrison will be good. And then they signed Dane Jackson, who was really good for them in 2023. Then I think he went to the Panthers, and now he's back here. And then a very under-the-radar signing was Josh Palmer. He's apparently been very impressive in camp. I think they've said he's been Josh Allen's number one guy, and while this is training camp and we're only a few days into it, it doesn't necessarily determine how well a player will play this next season coming up. I do think he'll be good for them. It's probably the strongest roster they've put around Allen, and at the very least, while it may not result in a Super Bowl, it will result in their 6th straight division title. With that, we're on to the AFC South, and this is where I get my first hot take of the video. I'm going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars over the Texans. It was really between them two, but I'm going with the Jaguars. So far, I really like what Gladstone has done in his first year as GM, especially through the draft. Of course, trading up for Hunter was a really great move, but even beyond that, getting Wyatt Mullum, Michelle Tutton, Jack Kaiser, those were all guys I was looking at for day 2 and day 3. And they also made some good signings as well. Tried to fix what was statistically the worst pass defense in the league by adding Jordan Lewis and Eric Murray. They also signed Patrick McCarry, helped shore up the O-line a bit and protect T-Law. And then they signed Dyami Brown, who I wouldn't say he broke out last year, but he did flash some potential, so he could be an interesting wide receiver 3 for them. But most of this pick just comes from buying into Trevor Lawrence finally having that year. While I wouldn't label him a bust, he has been rather underwhelming for a number 1 overall pick. And while some of those reasons have been out of his control, like having Urban Meyer as his coach for his first year, we're still kind of waiting for like a true breakout season, which we thought we saw in his sophomore year, especially towards the latter half of it. But then he started to regress a bit, and then he got injured. So it just feels like this will be the year that we finally see the full picture of what we saw at Clemson from Lawrence. While we're on the AFC South, I do want to go off on a bit of a tangent because I saw that Traylon Burks got released, and that really just made the whole A.J. Brown trade even funnier. I mean, the Titans traded their starter wide receiver to draft a rookie whose comp was that star wide receiver. It's like the Family Guy boat mystery box scene. Like, oh, an A.J. Brown's just an A.J. Brown, but a rookie could be anything. He could even be an A.J. Brown. All right, moving on to our final division of the conference, we got the AFC West, and it's pretty cut and dry. I'm going with the Chiefs. Maybe a little bit more competitive than it has been in recent years, especially with the Broncos and Chargers coming off playoff appearances. I think it's the Broncos first since their Super Bowl year, and then the Raiders might be a little bit more competent with Geno Smith at the helm, but really I can't see any of them usurping the Chiefs. After getting embarrassed in the Super Bowl, we might see a revenge tour type season, especially from Mahomes, because it feels like certain narratives have formed around him from both fans and national media alike. So I could see him going on a tear and having a season similar to his 2018 to 2022 years. The only reason I'm slightly hesitant to say that is because Matt Nagy's still OC, and well, he hasn't really done him any favors, or anyone he's coached for any favors. But like everyone else you mentioned so far, the Chiefs have had to put together a really good draft class, which, you know, there's a pattern there. All these guys, all these division winners that I'm picking had really good draft classes. Including they got more weapons from Mahomes, which he really did need. None of his receivers broke 1,000 yards last season. Actually, none of them broke 900 yards last season. Travis Kelce led them with 823. So they went out and they got Jalen Royals, who I think is a very under-the-radar wide receiver in this class, and running back Rashard Smith out of SMU. They also got Omar Norton-Lott, which I thought was a good pick. So yeah, I think the Chiefs are gonna. Where would this be? Their like ninth or they've won like 9 or 10 years in a row. They've won every year since Mahomes has been started, and they've won a few years before that with Alex Smith starting. So either way, they've won a lot in a row. Okay, moving on, we're onto the NFC now, and once again, we're starting with the North. You know, we're going north, east, southwest, you know, almost like a compass might. Maybe that's where I got the idea. Anyway, either way, for the North, I'm going with the Lions for the third straight time. Packers, I think, have the best chance of keeping things competitive. Maybe the Bears. It always feels like they make good moves, but then once the regular season rolls around, they kind of just disappoint. But maybe Caleb Williams takes that next step. Even if he does, I think it's going to be the Lions taking this division. They went 15-2 last year and won it, despite being the most injured team in football. I know they flamed out in the postseason, but still, it's kind of impressive how well they did with how many injuries they had. They basically had a practice squad defense in that last leg of the season. So, I mean, as long as everyone doesn't die again, they should be good. Unfortunately, they did already lose Levi Onwuzurike, defensive tackle. I think it was an ACL tear. So that's really unfortunate, but hopefully it isn't a sign of things to come. Hopefully they stay even just like slightly healthy this year compared to last year. It'll be a big improvement. Another team who had a solid draft, which, again, you've seen the pattern. Maybe not as good as some of the other teams that I chose to win their division, but they still had a really good draft. Tyleik Williams from Ohio State I like. Tate Ratledge. I was really upset that the Bengals didn't get him when they easily could have in the second round and instead drafted. No disrespect at all. I like Demetrius Knight. I think he's going to be a great guy, but he would have been there in like the third or fourth round. Why the fuck did we not draft Tate Ratledge? And then also Isaac Tosley, I thought was a pretty good pick. But really, they just have one of the best skill groups in the league. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta. I know he didn't have as good of a season as his rookie season, but he still had a pretty good season, especially with how many weapons are in this offense for him to get the production they did. It's pretty impressive. And really just have a lot of stars on both sides of the ball. Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson. I know he's coming off that injury, and I'm sure some people are worried that he might not be the same, but I think he'll start off slow. I think he will eventually get back to form. And then also Brian Branch is one of the best young safeties in the league. He's coming off his first Pro Bowl in year 2. So the Lions have a really good roster, and they added to it with this draft. So I think they'll three-peat here, which is crazy to say because just in, 2021, right after they traded Stafford for Goff, they didn't win their first game until like week 11. So now fast forward 3 years later, and I'm not going to say they're set to be because then I might jinx them, but they're on pace to three-peat as division champs. Alright, now we're on to the easiest pick of the entire video. I'm taking the Eagles for the NFC East. No surprise here. The Super Bowl champs, they just had one of the most dominating wins we've ever seen in the Super Bowl. The most dominating win we've seen in, 5 years when the Bucs did it to the Chiefs in 2020. Okay, I made that sound like it was a longer time ago, but still, it was a very dominating win. And if they do repeat this year, not as Super Bowl champs, but as division winners, they'd be the first NFC East team to do so in over 20 years, which is just a crazy statistic. Can't believe it's just been a different team every year. Either way, I'd be more surprised by them having a case of the Super Bowl hangover than I would Jaden Daniels having a sophomore slump, which to me, the Commanders are really their only competition in the East. I'm just not impressed by the Cowboys. I know I did like the George Pickens edition, but it doesn't feel like they did enough this offseason to really consider me giving them, or for them to give the Eagles a run for their money. That being said, the Eagles did lose some key contributors. Josh Sweat was big in that Super Bowl win. Milton Williams, Mekhi Becton, Darius Slay, but they did put together a really strong free agency class. They signed Josh Oosh, Aziz Ojulari, and Adoree Jackson. So while they may not be one-for-one replacements, they should help soften the blow of those guys leaving. Not to mention, Harry Roseman had another masterclass in drafting. Jod Campbell, Andrew Makuba was my favorite. But him and I think Nick Emanwori, those two were my favorites safeties in this whole draft. I really liked Makuba. I really hoped, again, the Bengals would get him. I need to stop bringing things back to the Bengals. No one gives a shit if I think the Bengals should get someone. And anyways, Andrew Makuba was a really good pick. And then Antoine Powell-Ryland out of Virginia Tech. I think he was really underrated. And as we've seen before, Harry Roseman can turn these underrated, overlooked guys into contributors, key contributors. So he had another really good draft. They had a strong free agency class. And while they did lose a few guys, I still think they're my Super Bowl favorites again. All right, on to the second to last division of the video. Like am I the Da Vinci twins? Second to last division of the video. I want it to be a little controversial, a little edgy. You know, get people going with my pick here. Maybe say Falcons. Maybe say the Panthers even. You know, get people going in the comments, start typing up paragraphs and shit. You know. Rage bait. Do a little bit of trolling. Get the glands going. But ultimately, I'm going to go with the Buccaneers. It just feels like they have the strongest roster here. Even if Bryce Young builds off his strong string of performances he had after he came back from being benched and has like his first consistently solid season, or even if Penix builds off the flashes he showed in his very limited rookie season where he only played like 2 or 3 games. I think the Bucs, regardless if both those happen, will take the division title. They just have the strongest roster in the division. They got young talent like Bucky Irving, Mecca Egbuka, Tyke Smith, and great vets. Baker Mayfield, Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and so on and so forth. It just feels like the Bucs have the best roster. And even if they're not like best, they got the best QB. I think they got the best defenders overall. Maybe not individually. I think Jesse Bates is the best safety in the division, but overall they have the best defenders. They got the best weapons. No, they don't have the best running back, but they have a really good running back. Bucky Irving, I do like Bucky Irving a lot. I wouldn't say he's the best running back in the division, but he's still a really good running back. Either way, Tampa Bay takes it for what would be a 3rd straight year, I believe. Yeah, they take it for the 3rd straight year. And finally, we have the NFC West. This was really the hardest to project. It kind of feels like everyone here has a shot, even the Cardinals. I'm not saying it's likely, but I feel like the Cardinals even have a shot at winning the division title. For the West. I know the 49ers struggled last year with injury, and that was a big reason why they had such a down year. I think they only had 6 or 7 wins. They lost some players in free agency. They lost Dre Greenlaw and Hufanga to both of them went to the Broncos, and then, of course, Deebo Samuel got traded to the Commanders. But even with all the losses, they still have a strong roster, and maybe they bounce back after being injured and having such a bad year last year. And you have the Seahawks. They have a lot of great weapons, most notably Jack Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp. Also, Kenneth Walker's not a bad running back. And they also have some solid contributors on defense, Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon. But did they downgrade at QB? Or was it more of just a lateral move? I know that's been a big conversation this offseason, at least from what I've seen, is people can't really decide if Geno Smith or Sam Darnold is better. I think it's going to be more of a scheme thing. We'll see, though. Cardinals, they've seen a flip-flop between being completely terrible and somewhat competent on a year-by-year basis. Is this the year that Murray and company finally figure it out and take the division for the first time in his career? We'll see. Ultimately, I'm going to go with the Rams. I know Stafford's aging, and they lost a few guys in free agency as well, notably Cooper Kupp. but it feels like they have at least a ton of questions here. The biggest is probably how much, if at all, of an upgrade will Devontae Adams be over Cooper Kupp at this stage in their careers. They also have a really strong, just like the Lions, they also have a really strong skill position group. Puka Nacua, comfortably a top 10 wide receiver in the league. Some people say higher, some people say right there. And he was on pace to build off of his stellar rookie season with an even better sophomore season before injury. He was averaging more yards per game. So, and I know that's not like, oh, he was averaging more yards per game. That means he would have definitely had a better season, but it's the best way to project when someone gets injured. Kyren Williams is coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. And then Devontae Adams, even on that terrible Jets team, he showed he had something left in the tank. He had his 5th consecutive 1,000-yard, 8-touchdown season. So, who cares? I know they have some aging players, most notably Stafford and Devontae Adams, but they have some youth on this team, especially in the defense. Jared Verse is coming off Defensive Rookie of the Year. Braden Fisk was in conversation for the award. He was 3rd in voting. And then Ahkello Witherspoon's a solid corner. And then they have the 2 Camerons at safety, Cameron Kitchings and Cameron Curl, who I think is going to be an underrated duo. So it just feels like the Rams will repeat year. This will just be the second year in the road for them because I think the year before that the 49ers won and went to the Super Bowl. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you for watching. I know for the 15 people that watched and then the 3 people that probably stayed, it was probably weird seeing me upload in May and then not upload for 2 months, but yeah, I'm back now and hopefully can upload on a weekly schedule for the 3 people that care. You know what? I'm gonna do an outro song. Let's get an outro song in here. Let's get a little bit more professional. Space money, fancy clothes, ops and coppers are disposed. Talk slow, lower your tone. If you need an illegal loan, game killer, alcohol.